say some interesting connections between him and the Daytona Beach serial killer, and I'm not saying it's him, but this is one of those guys where you go, holy crap, I wonder, this kind of matches up, because he was in jail from December 14th of 2004 until October 23rd, 2005, and then our first victim was killed on the 24th of December 2005. So 2 months after he got out. He also went back into jail on August 1st of 2006, and he didn't get out of jail until February 16th of 2008, which rules him out for Stacey Gage. But as I said, I'm not sure that I want to lump Stacey Gage in with the first 3 killings, but it makes him available for being the bad guy, because he did shoot a prostitute in the face. He has no qualms about shooting somebody in the face when he doesn't get what he wants.
Yeah,
I got no proof.
Here's
pretty
the
sure
problem.
his DNA has probably been run through the system, and he's probably been ruled out, but it's just, this is one of those things. So listen, we do this internally. We do this all the time, where we look at a board and people start posting. People say, "Oh my God, what about this person? What about this person?" And I found myself going through the correctional website doing that very same thing. The only thing that stopped me is that because he's in the Florida system, I'm pretty sure they've already taken his DNA and he's already been ruled out.
Well,
he's a despicable human being,
sure,
but it's interesting to look at the dates.
The crimes are very dissimilar, though. I mean, he shot a prostitute in the head.
In the face.
He shot a prostitute in the head or the face, however you look at it. But they're actually very dissimilar crimes. I mean, because this is the kind of thing that, you really see with, dumb people with poor impulse control who get a little frustrated, get a little pissed off, and they shoot somebody.
And they're under the influence already.
That's that kind
Or
of thing.
they're jonesing.
Whereas your average serial killer is not that sort of person. He's somebody who's more methodical and
Not as impulsive.
Yeah, he's not going to impulsively shoot somebody in the head. I mean, that's why I think the character of the crimes, even though physically they're the same thing, the character of the crimes is much different in my opinion.
And I'm in agreement with you, Joe. That's why I said I pointed this to an example, because I found myself in that situation that we always talk about people falling into and pointing the blame.
Well, no, and he's actually as good a suspect as some of the other ones who've been named. Don't get me wrong. I'm not totally slamming him for that respect. But
but he's in the slammer.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, he probably should be there. Yeah.
I have one other thing that I want. This was a real question for me when it came into this case, and this is kind of outside of our theory section. But if Stacey Gage is truly in part of the group, how is it that somebody is able to, over the course of basically 2 months, go on a killing spree and kill 3 women, and then suddenly be able to stop for about a year and do it one more time, and then not do it again at all? Like, that's a giant question to me of how, because it doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's like bang, 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 pause, bang, done.
I would not take it as a given that he's done. He might still be killing people. He's just not using his 40 caliber pistol and he's not shooting him in the back of the head.
Yeah. And this is another one of those points where the Daytona Beach serial killer is similar to Lonnie Franklin Jr., the Grim Sleeper, because as you'll find out, as we're about to talk about it with Christine, he took a big break. He took a 10 to 13 year break, depending on the victims.
I'm not entirely convinced that he did, but it looks like he did.
Based on the victims that were found, he took a pretty big break.
Yeah.
So we're going to stop here, and I want to go ahead and bring in the conversation with Christine and her take and what she shared with us about this.
Detectives definitely don't think that he took a break. They think that, because 2 of the victims, Bernita Sparks and Janisha Peters, were found in dumpsters by, homeless people looking for, like, recyclables and stuff like that. And so there's a good chance that they would have ended up in a landfill. So the detectives think that a lot of his victims ended up in landfills. They think, like, he's known to have killed 15 women, but they think it's probably closer to 30. and that some of the women, are in landfills right now. So I don't know. Like, I think that, I know that there was a case in 2000. So, his last known victim was in 1988, and then there was a case in 2000. During the 90s, it was also a time when his kids would have been teenagers, so, who knows? Maybe they were like, Dad, what are you doing leaving the house at 3 o'clock in the morning? Like, where are you going? Like, I don't know if there was something going on in his family life that, stopped him from doing it. Because, for example, like Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, he would stop at times too, when he was happy in his relationship. So I think sometimes these, like, serial killers, they might stop if they're happy in their relationships. Like, maybe, Lonnie was happy in, with a girl he was dating, who knows? But the cops don't actually think that he did, but, it's hard to tell. So I'm not really sure.
Overall, the whole thing is entirely disturbingly possible. And our killer is probably still in the area, and he probably did take a short break, or like you said, Joe, probably worse, he didn't stop and changed his MO. Maybe he started watching Dexter, because that'd been out for a couple of years. It was like, holy crap, I could just dump him out in the ocean? That's so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. People, we've used the term before, killers evolve. Maybe his MO evolved and he realized dumping them in public spaces was not a good way to go. Or shooting them was not the way to go. Because his DNA doesn't seem to have been collected anywhere else that we know of.
Well, he also confirmed.
Yeah?
Well, is that?
That's the thing that people do.
True.
Or it could
Sometimes that is why U-Haul exists.
True.
Or he could have started putting them in dumpsters and they got hauled off to the landfill, as Christine mentioned about the Grim Sleeper.
Yeah.
So maybe
there's a lot of options that could have happened.
A lot of possibilities there.
Yeah. So it's pretty hard to say. I personally, I want to think that it's a local, because that makes it makes sense why Willie's place was kind of the epicenter of everything.
It was Willie. He did it.
Yeah, it could have been Willie.
Groundskeeper Willie.
It was the bar.
It could have also been somebody in local law enforcement, because 40 caliber is actually
favorite thing.
Well, no, it's not my favorite thing. But it's
actually, I hadn't brought that up in a long time.
Yeah, 40 S&W is actually a popular round with law enforcement. So, of course, it's actually a popular round with civilians too. But,
yeah,
I just actually wanted to make all our police listeners angry at me.
Yeah, well, it's been a while since you've done it, so spot on. Good job, bud.
Good job. Yeah, I know. Thanks, Joe.
Kevin, any particular favorites or disfavorites or?
No, my favorite theory is that he's dead.
I kind of like that one.
I like that one a lot.
Theory, yeah.
That is a good theory.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Let me think. Yeah, long haul truck driver? Nah, probably a local.
All right.
Local who died.
I think it was it could have been a local who had a particular grudge against these three women, and we just haven't figured out the connection.
It's true.
3 or 4 women.
Surprise.
Or it could have been somebody who just wanted to, scare away the prostitutes in the area.
If indeed they were all drinking at the same place, they could have all offended the same person in some way.
Sorry, I do have another theory. It's called the Joe Spectrum. So one of these women was the actual target, and the person was trying to cover up his murder, the murder.
That's
with the two other murders.
I like that. That's a good theory. That's original.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal.
My last theory.
Great. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to give you that favorite part of the show that you have, which is all of the important details and little bits. This episode, along with all episodes and some of our research links, will be available on the website, thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. On there, you can also find links to merchandise and all of our, basically every episode. Oh, that's what I was going to say, is that we have the episode list page. So we've been telling folks to go look at that. If you want to see if we've done one before, that's a much easier way to search for them. We Thinking Sideways. We have a subreddit, and we are on Facebook, so the Facebook page and the Facebook group. So join the group, like the page. Lots of great conversations happening there. If you have, you want to subscribe to the show, which we love. We love if you do that, and there's a whole bunch of places to do that. A lot of people do through iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher, whatever avenue, whether it's download or streaming that you want to use,
the new channel, obviously,
chances
is
are
here for a
good
couple
we're
reasons.
already
One,
there.
there
If
was a
that
need for a
service
second
allows you
channel
to
anyway.
leave a rating, we'd appreciate that
Also,
as well.
the main
And
channel
of
was
course, if you've got
demonetized. Now, it
any
wasn't
kind of
YouTube's
questions or additional
necessarily that
theories
it
or
got
comments,
demonetized.
anything
It might
like
be,
that, and you'd like
you
to
know,
send
there's a
those to
couple
us directly,
individuals
you can email
who I was
that to
chatting
us
to.
at
You know what? Maybe they were AI bots. They could have been AI
thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com.
chatbots.
And
who are-
that is all of
Okay.
that particular bits of housekeeping. So I think I need a really hot shower to scrub off after this. So can we just leave now?
Yes, please.
Toodaloo. I guess Choopy came out unscathed this time. We'll hit him next week.
Next week we'll get
Yeah.
that little bugger.
Bye, guys.
All right, sorry, Choopy. Bye, everybody.
Thinking Sideways is not supported by a postal carrying primate. Instead, it's supported by the generous donations of our listeners on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/thinkingsideways to learn more. And thanks.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data for formulation of
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Well, hi there. Welcome to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I am Joe, joined as always by
Devin.
and
Steve.
And this week we're going to talk about it's kind of an international mystery, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
More than kind of, yeah.
It's definitely an international mystery.
Mm-hmm.
For us, I guess. I mean, there are people in this world that... No, that's not true.
No, it still
international, totally.
crosses country lines, no matter which way you slice it.
Okay, it's international.
Yeah, it do. Yeah. All right, this has got lots of murder intrigue. You guys are going to love it. And we're going to talk about the death of Alexander Litvinenko. First off, I want to give a shout out to Rosie, who suggested this mystery. Thanks, Rosie. And so let's talk about Alexander Litvinenko. He was a journalist at the time of his death, living in the UK. But before being a journalist, he was an FSB officer.
What's an FSB?
That's a good question. The FSB stands for Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation.
That doesn't sound ominous.
Yeah, they're the successor to the KGB.
What did the KGB stand for?
Oh, Christ.
I don't remember either.
I don't remember.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
it's been a while. But reportedly the FSB is not quite as brutal as the KGB.
Not quite.
But they're not quite Boy Scouts. Yeah. In 1998, Litvinenko was still with the FSB, and he and several other FSB officers publicly accused some of their higher-ups in the organization of ordering the assassination of Boris Berezovsky, who was a Russian tycoon. You've heard of those famous oligarchs, you know, the ones who wound up owning everything in the 90s, and they're super rich and stuff. Yeah, he was, unlike most of the other oligarchs, he didn't have any allies with the Russian government. He was actually kind of opposed to Yeltsin, and Boris Yeltsin, who was in charge in the late 90s still. This is pre-Vladimir Putin.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's just, that's always interesting to me when somebody who, is in power for a reason is like, but, screw those guys that are the reason I'm in power.
The reason I'm rich.
That make it easy for me.
Well, yeah, but he benefited from the situation. They weren't directly the reason he was in power, much as some others.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but anyway, back to Berezovsky. The assassination wasn't carried out, at least not at the time. Though he did die in 2013. He decided to move to Britain for health reasons, meaning he didn't want to get murdered. A lot of people were getting murdered in Russia around this time.
A lot of people left the country at this time, too, for that very same reason.
But in 2013, he was living in the UK. He was found dead in his home under somewhat suspicious circumstances. He hanged himself in his bathroom. It kind of looked like a suicide anyway. But he may actually have killed himself because his life had really taken a turn for the worse. He'd been through a series of lawsuits, lost a huge amount of wealth, and so he'd gone from being mega rich to broke.
He had also, it was known that he was having depression issues.
Yeah, he just
a great amount of time prior to that. So.
Yeah, so he had depression issues anyway. Now he really had something to be depressed about. He was selling his possessions, I understand, just to pay his legal bills. The coroner at the time still refused to rule the death a suicide because of who his enemies were. Mm-hmm. So even though the physical evidence kind of looked like suicide, and he'd had a motive, but still, and so it's still an open case.
Interesting.
Because they ruled it unknown, is that right?
Yeah, they did.
So this is one of those things that I just don't get, because it's just going to fuel the fires, I wish they would come up with a different term which is death by this, but with questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, or they could just say probably suicide, but I wouldn't guarantee.
Yeah, there's no opinion put in there, I guess, is a problem. It's a box that gets ticked as to the cause of death.
Yeah, I think the official terminology is open verdict.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, but
you don't really want your coroners editorializing.
No, but
speculating.
But the problem is that it then. What was the term that you just used again, Joe?
Open verdict.
Yes, open verdict means that people always construe that as unknown, and all these things always get pushed into these cases. I mean, we're not talking about Berezovsky at all here in the grander scheme of the story.
No,
this is just one of those things that I notice about this process with the British coroner. It just always bothers me.
Yeah, but Berezovsky is a bit of a footnote, though. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, if you're a British coroner and you're listening, clean up your act, all right?
Or write us a scathing email.
Yeah. Back to Alexander Litvinenko.
The guy we're doing the episode about.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
A little sidetrack there. So obviously he didn't stay with the FSB. After you accuse your
employer, your government,
that kind of stuff. You
gotta get out of
numbered.
there.
Yeah, he became a journalist instead and was critical of the government. He left Russia in the year 2000 with his family and was living in exile in the UK, working as a journalist. He wrote a couple of books, one called "Blowing Up Russia," and the other one was "Lubyanka Criminal Group." And they were critical of a lot of people have said that the Russian government eventually devolved into a gangster government.
That's kind of a well-known thing through
it is.
Through the decades.
Yeah. Before the fall of the Soviet Union, they were a gangster government, really, and under the Tsars they were kind of a gangster government, and today they are. So I don't know.
I was just keeping my mouth shut because I like being alive, Mr. Putin.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like you, Vladimir. Yeah,
You're very sexy.
Yeah. Especially
when you ride shirtless on that bear.
That's just what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Hunting salmon.
Yeah. Back to Alexander. In November 2006, Litvinenko became suddenly ill in London, and he was taken to a hospital where it was discovered that he had polonium-210 in his bloodstream. And
sounds like a made-up word.
Yeah, but apparently it's a real deal. But it's a very rare radioactive isotope, which you're not going to find in your average drugstore. But Litvinenko was hospitalized for 3 weeks, a little more or less, and then died of radiation poisoning. Not a pleasant way to go.
No, yeah. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Would be, no.
So here are our theories. There's basically three possible ones, unless you guys have other ones. But theory
Not
number
yet.
one. Yeah, it was an accident. Litvinenko was playing around with a little polonium, and maybe he accidentally inhaled some or got him on his...
He's got the polonium slinky, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that. So there's the accident. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Seems a bit unlikely. Yeah. Could have been suicide. He got his hands on some polonium and ingested it on purpose because he missed Mother Russia so bad.
Polonium candy?
Yeah, I don't know where he got it. Drugstore, I guess?
No.
And there's another possibility, which is murder or deliberate poisoning by a third party. And there's a little bit of support for the theory because several of Litvinenko's associates had been murdered.
Quite a few.
Yeah, quite a few. In police interviews in the hospital, Litvinenko said that he had met with two former KGB agents on the morning of November 1st, 2006, which is the same day that he became ill. Quite a coincidence there. And it turns out the investigation showed that one of the agents, whose name was Dmitry Koftin, had used a house and a car in Hamburg, Germany, which was where he was before he went over to London to meet with Litvinenko. And traces of polonium were found in both that house and the car. So that's kind of incriminating. And of course, Litvinenko had been accusing Vladimir Putin of various heinous crimes, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And so there was what am I saying? Of course, Vladdy had nothing to do with this.
Nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Again, I'm just going to stay mum on this.
Okay. So the murder theory looks like to be the strongest, right?
According to the British government.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously it's caused a little bit of a cooling of relations between Britain and Russia.
Well, they were kind of, going that way anyway.
Yeah. But this story is actually part of a bigger story, which you guys may have heard of. And I'm going to talk about the Russian apartment bombings of 1999.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. In the early 90s, when the Soviet Union fell, eventually, of course, as you all know, Boris Yeltsin became president of the Russian Federation.
After Gorbachev.
Yeah. And then and he was reelected in 1996, but by 1999 he was pretty unpopular. And we'll go into the reasons for that a little later. But it was Boris in charge in 1999. And then in August 1999, Yeltsin fired his prime minister and his entire cabinet, by the way, and then he appointed a fairly unknown guy named Vladimir Putin to replace his prime minister. And again, Putin was pretty unknown at the time. He was a former KGB officer, of course. We all know that. Yeltsin also let it be known that he preferred Vladimir to be his successor as president. Of course, I'm not sure how likely that was to happen at that moment, because Yeltsin wasn't polling all that well right at that moment in time.
So before we get too far into it, because I know that people who are familiar with some of the history will know this. Gorbachev was the one who came up with perestroika, correct?
Yeah, glasnost.
Yeah. That whole economic theory and stuff like that.
Glasnost was just more openness.
He opened the markets.
Kind of relaxing.
Right, which didn't do good things for them at all.
Well, yeah, it was mostly under Yeltsin. His economic reforms. He talked about, quote, economic shock therapy and all that stuff.
Yeah, he was going to fix what Gorby had messed up.
Well, I mean, the whole situation's been messed up for years. I mean, the planned economies never do well.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, it was the problem was that the state was propping up failing businesses because no business could fail in the perfect state.
Yeah.
But I was trying to remember who did what. So that's the order that it went from.
I think Gorbachev pretty much continued the planning economy, and it was Yeltsin who wanted to privatize everything.
Well, no, not exactly. So it was because we were talking about perestroikas. That was where Gorbachev was trying to allow the free market economy to happen.
A little bit.
Parallel
kind of thing.
Simplified version is that the state still controlled everything, but you could now sell to the market at a different price than what you sold to the state. The state got the right price, the good, cheap price, but you could sell it at whatever you wanted. But of course, then people started getting greedy, and it started causing. When Gorbachev obviously was super unpopular, when inflation was through the roof, and it's the ruble. Yeah, the ruble was worth nothing. So then Yeltsin.
Is that when they were using it as wallpaper?
I don't think it was quite that worthless.
Not quite, but that's a different country.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was Germany in the 20s, 30s, something like that. But no, and then after that, that's when Yeltsin